parking lot behind a Cracker Barrel off I-95, I found my brother sitting in his pickup truck with my niece asleep in the back seat and everything he owned shoved into black contractor bags. He didn't see me at first. He was just sitting there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead at nothing, like a man waiting for a bus that wasn't coming. I tapped on the window. He flinched. "Walt, what in the hell are you doing in a Cracker Barrel parking lot at 3 in the afternoon?" He rolled the window down slow. His eyes were rimmed red, not crying, just that kind of red you get when you've been holding it together for too many hours. "Got let go this morning, Hank." "Mr. Harda." Caldwell said our last name didn't match the kind of clientele they were trying to bring in. Said the Hollises were workshop people, wrenches, not boardroom people. I looked past him. Emma was 8 years old, still in her school uniform from St. Nit. Catherine's asleep with her cheek pressed against the window and a juice box leaking onto her backpack. And Diane? Diane changed the locks while I was driving home. Her father had it done over lunch. My clothes were on the porch in those bags. Emma's clothes, too. He laughed, but there was nothing in it. She didn't even pack the kid's stuffed rabbit, had to dig through the bag in the driveway. I felt something settle in my chest, cold and quiet, like a stone dropping into a deep well. "Get in my truck, Walt." "Where are we going?" "Home." "My home. And tonight your father-in-law is going to learn something I should have taught him 3 Christmases ago." I helped him lift Emma, still asleep, into the back of my F-250. She didn't even wake up, just murmured something about pancakes and curled into the leather seat. We left Walt's truck right there in the lot. I'd send Carl out to get it later. I'm Hank Hollis. I'm 68 years old. I grew up in a trailer outside Macon, Georgia, with a daddy who fixed lawnmowers and a mama who cleaned houses. I quit school in 11th grade to work at a tire shop. By the time I was 40, I owned that tire shop. By the time I was 60, Hollis Industrial Holdings owned 43 distribution facilities across 9 southeastern states with annual revenue north of $900 million. But I never put my name on a building. I never sat for a magazine photo. I drove a 10-year-old pickup and ate breakfast at the same Waffle House on Tuesday mornings. The Caldwells didn't know any of that. To them, I was just Walt's older brother, the one who'd taken him in after our mama passed, the one who showed up in dad jeans and a flannel at Diane and Walt's wedding rehearsal 3 years ago and shook Mr. Caldwell's hand a little too firm. He looked at my hand the way a man looks at a dirty rag. "Workshop hands," he'd said, smiling like it was a compliment. "Diane, your brother-in-law has workshop hands." I'd kept smiling, kept my mouth shut. Walt had asked me to. Walt was 14 years younger than me. After Daddy died, I'd more or less raised him, put him through community college, helped him get his first sales job. When he met Diane Caldwell at a Charleston wedding and she brought him home to that big white house on the Battery, he came to me with his hands open and his eyes scared. "Hank, her people are different from us. I don't want them looking at me through you. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. Promise me you won't tell them what you do. Promise me you'll let me earn it." I promised. And for 3 years I kept that promise while sitting at Sunday suppers in Charleston watching Mr. Caldwell carve a roast like he was knighting it. Welcome to my channel. If this story strikes a nerve with you, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And tell me down in the comments where you're listening from today. I love seeing where you all are. Some details in this story have been adjusted for privacy, but the heart of it is real, and I think you'll know what I mean by the time we're done. Driving back to my place outside Somerville with Walt staring out the passenger window and Emma asleep in the back, I thought about all those Sunday suppers. 3 years of them. The Caldwell house sat on East Bay Street with hurricane shutters that had seen the Civil War. Inside, every room smelled like old leather and lemon polish. Mr. Caldwell, 72 years old, retired from Caldwell Maritime Logistics, where he was now chairman emeritus. Mrs. Caldwell, 68, played bridge on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Diane, my brother's wife, ran a charity that mostly raised money to fund itself. That first Sunday 3 years ago, Mr. Caldwell handed Walt a glass of bourbon. He waited until Walt took a sip. "Son, that's a Pappy Van Winkle 23. Most folks let it sit on the tongue. You drink it like sweet tea." Walt's face turned the color of brick. "Sorry, sir. No need to be sorry. We just have to teach you. Hollis's drink, Caldwell's appreciate." I cut my pork chop and said nothing. Every Sunday after that, there was a new lesson. The way Walt held his fork, the college on his resume, the fact that he'd come up through sales instead of getting an MBA at Duke like Diane's cousins, the fact that he wore Allen Edmonds instead of Alden, the fact that he wore Allen Edmonds instead of Alden, the fact that our daddy had been a small engine mechanic, the fact that I, his older brother, drove a pickup that looked like it had been through a war. Diane never defended him. Not once. She'd just look at her phone or refill her wine. I watched my brother shrink. Watched him start saying, "Yes, sir," the way a soldier says it. Watched him stop telling stories at the table. Watched him laugh at jokes that had him as the punchline. And I remembered my promise. So I sat there. I made small talk about the Carolina Panthers. I let Mr. Caldwell pour me cheap bourbon while he poured himself the good stuff. I memorized every cut, every dig, every moment Diane scrolled Instagram while her father carved up my brother in front of his own daughter. I wasn't building grudges. I was building a record. About a year ago, I started noticing things. Walt stopped coming by my place on Saturdays to help me work on the old Bronco I was restoring. He said he was tired. Diane needed him for events. Then 6 months ago, he pawned the Hamilton khaki field I'd given him for his 40th birthday. It wasn't an expensive watch by their standards, maybe $1,200. But our daddy wore one just like it for 30 years, and I'd had Walt's engraved on the back. To my brother, time we share is the only kind that counts. When I noticed his wrist was bare at Easter, he said the band broke and it was at the jeweler. I knew it wasn't. A man doesn't pawn his daddy's watch unless something is breaking him from the inside. 2 months after that, I asked Carl to start looking. Carl had been my head of operations for 22 years. Before that, he was 12 years with Charleston PD. He was the only person besides my CPA who knew what I was actually worth. "Carl, I want to know what's going on at Caldwell Maritime. I want to know what Walt's job actually is. And I want to know what's happening inside that house on East Bay Street." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. That brings us to last Tuesday. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating a bowl of grits when Carl walked in without knocking and laid down a manila folder. Red sticker on the corner. Red meant act now. "You need to see this, boss." The first page was a copy of a police complaint filed at 11:42 that morning. Complainant Marshall Caldwell, Sr. Respondent Walter James Hollis. Allegation: theft of family valuables totaling approximately $1.6 million. Items listed included a Patek Philippe pocket watch, a set of antique dueling pistols, his late mother's emerald jewelry. He filed this 2 hours before he had Walt fired, Carl said. He wanted Walt arrested before he could even tell his side. I turned the page. Loan documents. 11 separate consumer loans pulled from regional banks across the Southeast over the last 14 months. All in Walt's name. Total exposure, $980,000. Walt's signature on every one, except forgeries, Carl said. I had a handwriting analyst out of Atlanta look at them. They lifted his signature off old sales contracts. He never saw a dime of that money. The collateral on the loans was a small commercial property Walt had inherited from our mama, a duplex in North Charleston worth maybe $250. When the loans defaulted, the bank would take that duplex. Walt would owe the rest personally. He'd be ruined and probably indicted for fraud at the same time. The third page made me set my coffee down. It was a transcript pulled off a recording. Walt and Diane in their kitchen. Diane's voice sweet as pecan pie. "You've been so angry lately, Walt. Have you thought about seeing somebody? I'm worried about Emma. The way you raise your voice." "I'm not raising my voice. You're recording this, aren't you? Why are you holding your phone like that?" "See, that's exactly what I mean. The paranoia." "She's been doing this for months," Carl said. "Recording him, editing pieces together. There's a whole folder on her cloud account my guy got into. She was building a custody case. Going to claim he was unstable, that Emma wasn't safe with him, that the Hollis side of the family had a, quote, history of unstable men." I closed the folder. I let the cold settle in. "There's one more thing, boss." He laid down a document I recognized immediately. It was a pledge agreement. My commercial trucking authority. The federal operating authority that allowed Hollis Industrial Holdings to run freight across 9 states. Without it, I couldn't move a single pallet. 43 facilities, 1,800 employees, $420 million in active contracts, all hanging on a piece of paper. It had been pledged as collateral on a $4 million loan from a private equity fund out of the Cayman Islands. How? Old notary down in Savannah. Marshall Caldwell's been paying him for years. He duplicated your seal. The funds transfer Friday at noon. I sat there in my kitchen, the grits going cold in front of me, and I looked out the window at the dogwood tree my wife planted before she passed, and I thought about Emma sleeping in my truck. And I thought about Walt staring at nothing in a Cracker Barrel parking lot, and I felt something shift inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Carl, stop that wire transfer. I don't care who you have to call at the Treasury Department. That money does not move on Friday." "Yes, sir. And then I want you to tell me everything you can find out about Marshall Caldwell. Every account, every property, every secret he's got buried in the salt marsh. By Thursday morning, I want to own his life on paper." Carl nodded. He'd worked for me long enough to know what that tone meant. He left. I sat there until the sun moved across the kitchen floor. Then I got up, walked into the living room where Walt was on the couch staring at the ceiling and Emma was on the rug, coloring a picture of a horse, and I sat down across from my brother. "Walt, listen to me. You are going to stay here as long as you need. Emma is going to enroll at the school down the road on Monday. You are not going to make a single phone call, send a single text, or look at a single email until I tell you otherwise. Do you trust me?" "Hank, I don't have anywhere else to go." "That's not what I asked." He looked at me. For the first time since the Cracker Barrel, his eyes focused. "I trust you. Good. Now go put your daughter to bed. I've got some calls to make." The next morning at 6 a.m., I was on the phone with Jim Patterson at Carolina First Bank. Jim and I had built our businesses up together side by side since the 80s. He owed me favors going back to a flood in '98. "Jim, I need you to help me buy some debt." "Whose?" "Marshall Caldwell. All of it." There was a long pause on the other end. "Hank, that's a man with deep roots in Charleston. Roots get pulled all the time, Jim. How much we looking at?" He called me back at 11. Marshall Caldwell, despite the white columns and the family name, was leveraged to the gills. The house on East Bay Street had 2 mortgages. The Sea Island vacation home was carrying an interest-only loan that was about to balloon. His daughter Diane had personal credit card debt north of $200,000. Caldwell Maritime Logistics, the company he was chairman emeritus of, was carrying $11 million in revolving credit lines. Total exposure across all of it, about $31 million, Jim said. It's all distressed paper. Banks would sell it at a discount in a heartbeat. Buy it, all of it, quietly. Use one of my holding LLCs out of Delaware. I want it on my desk by Thursday afternoon. Hank, what are you doing? I'm protecting my family. By Wednesday evening, Carl had more. He sat across from me with photographs and audio files. Marshall Caldwell had been meeting twice a month with a man named Sergey, something out of Wilmington. Container fraud. Shipping container reported missing. then resold off the books with the insurance claims paid out and pocketed. Caldwell Maritime had quietly been turning a side profit of about $200,000 a month for the last 3 years. The kind of thing that doesn't just bring civil suits, the kind of thing that brings federal indictments. I want photos of one of those meetings, I said. A clean one. Faces. Hands changing things. I want it documented. Already done, last night, outside a steakhouse in Mount Pleasant. I poured Carl a finger of bourbon. The good stuff, not Pappy. I don't go in for that kind of show. But good Tennessee whiskey from a small distiller I knew personally. You've earned this one. Thursday morning, Diane Caldwell called my brother's phone. He looked at me. I nodded. He picked up on speaker. Walt, honey, I think we should talk. I've been thinking. Maybe we move too fast. Daddy gets emotional sometimes. Why don't you come back and we'll work this out? Diane, you changed the locks. I was upset. Walt, listen, there's just one thing. Daddy needs you to sign a piece of paper, just a small thing. He says if you sign it, the police complaint goes away. We can be a family again. I held up a hand. Walt covered the phone. What does she want me to sign? He whispered. Tell her you'll meet her. He told her. They set a meeting for Friday morning at the Caldwell's house. She didn't know I'd be coming. That same Thursday evening, I sat in a parked car across from a private dining room at a country club in Mount Pleasant. Carl was beside me with a long lens and a parabolic mic the size of a salad bowl. Through the window, we watched Marshall Caldwell sit down with Sergey. We watched a manila envelope change hands. We watched Sergey hand Marshall a small flash drive. We had every word. By Friday morning, I owned $31 million of Marshall Caldwell's life. The Cayman wire transfer was frozen at the Federal Reserve under a money laundering review that wouldn't clear for 2 years minimum. The Charleston DA, an old fishing buddy of mine named Wendell Brooks, had a complete copy of the container fraud file sitting on his desk. The handwriting analyst was prepared to testify in a federal courtroom about the forged loan signatures, and I drove my brother to Charleston in my pickup truck. We pulled up to the house on East Bay Street at 10 o'clock sharp. Marshall Caldwell met us at the door in a blazer and a silk pocket square. He saw me and his face tightened. This is family business, Mr. Hollis. With respect, Marshall, I am family. I'm Walt's brother. Now move out of the doorway before I move you. He moved. Diane was in the front parlor with a stack of papers and a notary. Mrs. Caldwell was hovering near a sideboard like a ghost. Diane stood up when she saw me. What is he doing here? I sat down in a wingback chair. Walt sat next to me. I set a leather portfolio on the coffee table. Diane, Marshall, before we talk about whatever Walt is supposed to sign today, I want to share some things with you. I opened the portfolio. This is a copy of the police complaint Marshall filed Tuesday morning. The Charleston Police Department has already received a sworn statement from your housekeeper, Maria, confirming that the items listed as stolen are currently in a safe deposit box at South State Bank in Diane's name, where they have been since November. Maria packed them. She has photographs in time-stamped receipts. Marshall's mouth opened. Nothing came out. This is a copy of 11 loan documents bearing Walt's forged signature. A handwriting analyst from Atlanta has prepared an affidavit. Federal mail fraud charges have already been drafted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Filing is scheduled for Monday morning unless those loans are dissolved by close of business today. Diane sat down hard. This is a copy of Diane's audio archive from a cloud account she did not properly secure. 87 recordings of conversations with Walt, edited to support a custody petition. The Family Court Bar Association has reviewed it. The phrase used in the email I received this morning was gross procedural fraud. Custody petition won't survive contact with a judge. Diane will likely face contempt charges. This is a copy of a pledge agreement that attempted to use my federal trucking authority as collateral on a $4 million foreign loan. I'd ask which of you is responsible, but it doesn't matter. Both of you are named on related documents. The Department of Transportation considers this fraud against a federally licensed carrier. Sentencing guidelines start at 5 years. Mrs. Caldwell sat down on a velvet bench and put her hand over her mouth. I closed the portfolio. Then I opened a second one. And this is a copy of $31 million in personal and business debt, formerly held by various banks across the Carolinas and Georgia, now held by a Delaware holding company that is wholly owned by me. This includes both mortgages on this house, the lien on the Sea Island property, Diane's credit card balances, the line of credit at Caldwell Maritime Logistics. I looked at Marshall. He'd gone the color of paper. Marshall, you don't own this house. You haven't really owned it for 9 years. You owe it to a bank, and that bank just sold the paper to me. As of yesterday at 4:15 p.m., I am your creditor. You can't. I can. I did. I stood up. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to dissolve those forged loans by 5 o'clock today. You're going to dissolve those forged loans by 5 o'clock today. You're going to drop the police complaint. Diane is going to sign an uncontested divorce agreement giving Walt full custody of Emma and a fair division of marital assets. And then I'm going to lead this house, and you are going to spend the rest of your lives understanding that the ground you stand on belongs to a man whose brother you tried to destroy. Diane was crying. Marshall was sitting very still. And if we don't, he asked. I pulled out one more folder. I set it on top of the others. Then this folder, which contains photographs and audio of you accepting a flash drive from a Russian national in connection with a 3-year-old container fraud scheme, goes to U.S. Attorney Wendell Brooks at 4:30 this afternoon. He's expecting it. We had breakfast yesterday. Marshall closed his eyes. What do you want, Hank? I want my brother's life back. I want my niece raised by people who love her. I want you to remember every morning when you wake up in this house that you are a guest in it. That's all. I don't want your money. I don't even want to humiliate you publicly, although God knows I've earned the right. I just want to drive home with my family. Walt was crying quietly beside me. I'd never seen him cry as a grown man before. By 5 o'clock that evening, the loans were dissolved. The police complaint was withdrawn. The divorce papers were drafted, with Walt getting full physical custody and Diane getting weekend visits, supervised by Mrs. Caldwell, who had cried and apologized to Walt for an hour and asked if she could still be a part of Emma's life. We drove home in silence. Walt stared out the window. The marsh grass was turning gold along the Ashley River. Hank, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. I should have stepped in 2 years ago. I let pride keep me quiet, yours and mine. He didn't say anything for a long time. What happens to Marshall now? That's between Marshall and his conscience and the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm not going to release the container fraud file unless he gives me a reason to. I'm not in the business of destroying old men, but he knows it exists. He'll know that every day. And the debt, I'll sit on it. Quiet. I won't squeeze. As long as he and Diane behave, the world won't even know it changed hands. But if either of them ever lifts a finger toward you or Emma again, I'll foreclose on every square inch they own, and they'll be living above a bait shop in Goose Creek by Thanksgiving. Walt almost laughed. The first real laugh I'd heard from him in a year. That was 3 months ago. Walt and Emma have settled into the guest house on my property. Emma rides her bike up to the main house every morning for breakfast before school. She's got a rabbit now named Biscuit that lives in a hutch I built her. She calls me Uncle Hank Bear, which is a nickname I do not understand but which I answer to without complaint. Walt is running a regional division of one of my distribution companies. He earned the spot on his own merits. He's good at it. The man who used to apologize for existing now runs morning meetings with 80 employees and fires people when they need firing and backs his team when they don't. He bought himself a new watch last month with his own money, a Hamilton khaki field, just like the one he pawned. He had the back engraved. Time we share is the only kind that counts. Diane has been seeing a counselor. She comes by every other Saturday to take Emma to lunch. Mrs. Caldwell is usually with her. Walt doesn't speak to her much, but he's civil, and Emma seems to be doing okay with all of it. Kids are stronger than we give them credit for, but they remember everything, and I've been watching her close. Marshall Caldwell sold the Sea Island house to pay down the debt I'm holding. He doesn't come to the lunches. I haven't seen him since that morning in the parlor, and I don't expect I will again. Last Saturday, Emma found me out in the garage where I was finishing up the Bronco, the same one Walt used to come help me on. She had grease on her cheek and a wrench too big for her hand. Uncle Hank Bear? Daddy says you can fix anything. Daddy oversells me, sweetheart. Can you teach me how to fix things? I sat down on an overturned bucket and looked at her. 8 years old, same blue eyes as my mama, same stubborn jaw as my brother. Yeah, baby, I can teach you. I took the wrench out of her hand and got her a smaller one out of the rolling tool chest. I showed her how to hold it, how to feel for the catch on the bolt, how to listen to the metal. We worked for 2 hours. She got bored and went to chase the rabbit around the yard. I sat in the open garage door and watched her run. I made a lot of money in this life. I built something I'm proud of. But I'll tell you the truth, friends. I spent 30 years missing things I can't get back. I missed my wife's last good summer because I was opening a facility in Birmingham. I missed 1,000 Saturdays I could have spent teaching Walt to fix that Bronco when he was 8 years old. I traded family time for revenue, and the revenue feels real small now when I think about what it cost. The good Lord gave me a second chance to be a brother. He gave me a chance to be the kind of uncle a little girl can learn things from. He gave me a chance to use everything I built, not for buildings or for boardrooms, but for protecting people I love. That's the only thing money has ever been good for. I just took too long to figure it out. If you're sitting somewhere right now and somebody in your family is trying to make you small, trying to tell you that your name or your daddy's name or your hometown isn't good enough, I want you to hear me. The people who try to shrink you are usually doing it because they've already shrunk themselves and they need somebody beneath them to feel above. Don't argue with them. Don't beg them. Just remember who you are and keep building. And one day, if you've done the work, you'll be in a position to set things right, not with cruelty, with dignity. The Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. I always thought that meant money. I was wrong. It means showing up. It means teaching a little girl how to hold a wrench. It means driving through a Cracker Barrel parking lot at the right moment. It means making your last name mean something, not because of a column of figures, but because of how you treated the people who carried it with you. Friends, if this story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you tell me about it down in the comments. Let me know where you're listening from. Let me know if you've ever had a Marshall Caldwell in your own life and how you handled it. I read every one of these. We're a community here, and the stories you share with me have kept this old man going through more than one hard night. Some details have been changed for privacy, as they should be, but the heart of it is true. The heart of it is always true. The heart of it is always true. Take care of your people. They're the only thing that lasts. I sat on that overturned bucket in my garage long after Emma ran off chasing Biscuit around the yard, and I thought about how every choice in this story landed exactly where it was meant to land. Marshall Caldwell carved my brother up at his own dinner table for 3 years, and the cuts didn't disappear. They built to debt. He taught his daughter that some people were beneath her, and she became somebody who could change the locks on the man she'd vowed to love. He filed a false police report at lunchtime, and by supper time, that lie was on a desk at the U.S. Attorney's office. Nothing in this world is free, friends. The bill always comes. The only question is who pays it and when. I learned something late in life that I wish I'd learned at 30. Patience isn't weakness. When I sat at those Sunday suppers and let Marshall correct my brother's grip on a bourbon glass, I wasn't being a coward. I was keeping a promise to Walt, and I was watching, and I was learning the shape of the man I was dealing with. Wisdom is knowing the difference between a fight you should walk away from and a fight you should prepare for. I prepared. When the moment came, I didn't have to raise my voice in that parlor on East Bay Street. I just opened a folder. The work had already been done. But here's the part I want you to carry with you. The strength I had in that room didn't come from my bank account. It came from 30 years of choosing to be the kind of man who shows up. I picked up my brother when our daddy died. I helped him through community college. I took his call at the Cracker Barrel because he knew, even at his lowest, that I would come. Character is the only collateral that matters when life finally tests you. Build it slow. Build it daily. The way you treat the waitress at breakfast is the same way you'll treat your family when the pressure is on, because by then you won't have time to become somebody new. Walt is a different man today than he was a year ago, not because I rescued him, because he found his backbone in the wreckage and decided to stand on it. That's the part nobody can give you. You have to want it badly enough to keep getting up. Emma will grow up watching her daddy run a company and her uncle teach her how to hold a wrench, and she'll know in her bones that her last name means something, not because of what we own, but because of how we carry ourselves when somebody tries to make us small. Don't waste your life trying to please people who've already decided you're not enough. Spend it instead becoming the kind of person nobody can shrink. That's the only revenge worth having, and it's the only inheritance worth leaving.